Okay, now let's take a look at the pulmonary system. Now the pulmonary system is made up of obviously your two lungs. Pulmonary system is made up of two lungs. Again, you have your mouth, which is part of the digestive system as well. Your epiglottis is that little thing at the back of your throat that flips back and forth. That when you senses food, it blocks the trachea and lets the food go down the esophagus. And when it senses air, changes in air pressure, it flips over and lets the air through. So it's a really important part of the respiratory system. The larynx. The things that you need to know for the test are the trachea, which is the tube that bifurcates or splits in two, and your lungs. Really, that's the main part of the rest of the pulmonary system. But as we discussed in class, the pulmonary system is, again, a tube within a tube. And if we were to look at this tube within a tube, again, this tube, though, doesn't go all the way through. You remember the other tube that we looked at, the esophagus, that tube starts out here at the mouth. It goes all the way down through the creature, and in the case of a human, all the way out to the rectum. This tube stops at mid-chest for humans, and as you saw in a turtle as well, and the mouse, and the pig. Just in all these creatures, the lungs stop at the chest, and in general there's two of them. The trachea splits, so this is kind of one of those structures that's pretty conserved. So you have a tube within a tube. You see that the simplified drawing has a little sac. You have the air, and it's here at the capillary levels, and we'll see in a little bit what I mean by capillary versus artery or vein or arterial or venule when we look at the circulatory system. But when you look at this bifurcation, these little sacs of air, the things inside your trachea, the things inside your air still are not in your body. That air, that oxygen, has to be absorbed into your blood. And then the CO2 has to move from your blood into that sac. So that movement happens here at these tiny little openings. And you see that there's arteries and veins surrounding every possible tissue, because that's where this is happening. It's from the blood. That's the key component to that entering and exiting of your body, just like in the digestive system. So let's take a look at that blood component real quick. Again, we'll go more into depth when we look at the circulatory system. But you have two circuits. You have your pulmonary circuit and your systemic circuit. Your systemic circuit is your body. That includes, in this drawing, this is a very simplified and it's not anatomically correct. It just wants to show you, look, you have kind of two circuits, two places where the blood circulates, goes in circles. And so you have the first one, which is your pulmonary circuit, and you have your body circuit. The body circuit comes in through the vena cava and comes up or down, depending if it's coming from the top of your body or below your heart, and it comes back from the body into that right atrium. It goes into the right atrium, passes through these two valves into the ventricle. Once that ventricle squeezes, that blood goes. See how these are one-way valves? They only allow the blood to flow in one direction. That takes that blood to the lungs. And here in the middle, this is your vein. These are veins. This is vein. This is artery. Remember, this is a pulmonary artery, the only artery in your body that has low oxygen. Then you have your capillaries. That's where the oxygen is exchanged. Now the blood's coming back to your heart. Because it's coming back to your heart, it's called a vein. And because it's from the lungs, it's in the pulmonary circuit, we call it the pulmonary vein. And that comes back into the atrium. Remember, the atrium is where things enter, just like the atrium in our building. It goes into the left atrium. From the left atrium enters the left ventricle. Again, the squeeze from the left ventricle sends that blood out to the rest of your body. This is the aorta, and in this aorta you have oxygen-rich blood, but in the pulmonary vein is the only vein in your body that has oxygen-rich blood, because it's not until after the capillary beds, these are the capillary beds here, that you get all the oxygen leaving the system, leaving the blood, entering the tissues, the cells that make up your body, the inside of your body. And the blood without the oxygen continues to pull and recollect back into the big veins that allow you to go back into the heart. Okay, so let's take a look a little closer here. Here's that respiratory system, again, they're your ribs, and you see there's the branching of the trachea into all the little tubes, and of course you have the blood vessels. If we take a real close look at it, here's one of these little grouping of alveoli that we call bronchioles, right? So these are tiny little air passages here. Here's this little alveoli cross section. So here's the alveoli broken in half. And these little bundles, all these little bundles make up this thing you call a lung. And you saw this really, really well in the turtle. And you see that the blood circles around, the blood vessels circle around and kind of innervate. We call it innervate everything, so that it allows for the oxygen from outside the body. This is outside the body, remember. The oxygen from outside the body can actually come into contact in these tiny little capillary beds, capillary networks. They allow the oxygen to go from outside the body into the blood. You see it right here. Oxygen outside going into, and CO2 from in the blood going out into the space that's outside your body again. And so these capillaries, these places where they come into direct contact with the spaces. This is the space here that you see here, and that allows for oxygen to go in, CO2 to go out at every one of these tiny little capillaries. So in comes the pulmonary artery that brings in this deoxygenated blood. Remember, it's blue here because there's low oxygen, but it's an artery because it's moving away from the heart. It circulates through these capillaries and then starts to recollect. Remember, comes out, here it comes out, starts to separate into the little capillaries right here in the alveoli. Then they start to regroup back on the other side and start to form an artery again. And this artery that moves away back to the heart, away from the lungs, is the pulmonary, not artery, but a vein that moves towards the heart and away from the lungs. It's the pulmonary vein. This vein has oxygen-rich blood, and it's the only vein in the whole body that has that oxygen-rich blood. So this vein actually correlates to this vein. This blue artery correlates to this blue artery, and this is what's happening here at this capillary bed here. This is, again, the pulmonary circuit. Well, I hope this helped you understand what I want you to know about the respiratory system. Basically, you have two lungs, a trachea, the nose and mouth, the nasal cavity that allows oxygen to come in and CO2 to be exchanged at the alveoli. You should know. If you want to know alveoli, that's fine. I don't think I'm going to test it, but you need to know that the circulatory system is very closely related to that, to the respiratory system. Very closely related, and it's at the capillary level that you get that exchange of oxygen for CO2. Just like in the digestive system, it's the capillary level where you have the nutrients being exchanged from outside going into the body. So it's that circulatory system is at the center of just about everything. Please, please, please don't forget pulmonary artery, the only artery that has deoxygenated blood. It collected the blood from the rest of the body, brought its deoxygenated. Pulmonary vein, the only vein in the body going back to the heart that has oxygen-rich blood.